Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're working on the rock garden for my natural cottagecore island called Sycamore. I haven't done a rock garden in a really long time, and as I want to be playing this island normally again once it's decorated, I figured it would be a good idea to make a functional rock garden to allow me to gather resources so I can actually craft items later. The build turned out really cute, and I thought it would be fun to share the process with you, and maybe you can use this as inspiration for your own rock garden. If you've not heard of a rock garden before, it's essentially an area of your island where you've made all of the rocks spawn together, either because you want them out of the way or having them all together makes it easier to gather the resources later. The issue with doing a rock garden is that moving the rocks into position is kind of a pain. And I've spared you from watching me move the rocks in this video because, not gonna lie, it took about 8 hours to move every single rock into the right position. And that's factoring in all the preparation you have to do to get them into the positions that you want them to be. I also realized as I was working on setting this up that I made a really big mistake. And if you ever fancy creating your own rock garden for yourself, you can learn from this too. This island still isn't massively decorated, and because I wanted to make a lot of progress in decorating Sycamore, I thought it would be a good idea to get the rock garden done early so that I have a larger area completely decorated and I can move on to other things I want to get done on this island. The problem with this is that you then have to cover more of your empty island with things to prevent the rocks from spawning in places you don't actually want them. So the process of setting up this rock garden took way longer than it should have done. So if you guys ever do want to make your own rock garden, seriously, don't start it as one of the first big builds you do on your island. Wait until you have more of your island decorated so that you don't have to get quite so much prep work done. Because of how long it can take to move rocks into position, I find that rock gardens are not something which are oftenly made by island designers. And when the island designers do plan on building one, they end up being something which is easily decorated with just one item in the middle of a ring of rocks, rather than making a rock garden into a larger build. This rock garden that I've made here is functional, so the space that is needed to make it work is a lot bigger, but also it's made bigger by the fact that I wanted to decorate in between the rocks themselves. I wasn't sure on how this was going to look at this size, particularly after I placed the rocks in random places and placed the custom code pathing around them, but it really turned out well in the end once I could see the vision of it coming together. What I wanted to do for this rock garden was to have it fit naturally into the vibes of the rest of the island. So I've used this dirt path that I've been using around the rest of the island to create a ring around each of the rocks, and I varied the shape and size of this to make it look more interesting. However, because I found that this area was quite large and open when I had the rocks surrounded by the dirt path, I couldn't see how this was going to come together straight away. So periodically, whilst I was putting down the custom codes, I added in some trees and bushes to separate out the area and just fill it in a little bit more. Sometimes I do this sort of thing because it can really help with working out how to decorate an area later. If you need some help to make your build come together a little bit more easily, I would recommend putting down trees and bushes either during the time that you spend placing custom code pathing or after you've done so. You may find that you have more ideas on how to make your build come together once you've got some more natural looking items in place. From there, I then decided to hit all of the rocks so that they drop the resources around the rocks. This was pretty important for making sure that the garden stays functional, as I want to be able to get access to all of the drops you can get from the rocks when you hit them. So I theorized that if I could see them on the ground and the space they need to be there, placing items to decorate the garden would be so much easier so that I can get the results I want from this rock garden. There's this double rock section right at the front which I really like, and I'm so glad I was able to put this into place. In this section, I decided to make it more like an almost an excavation sort of mini build, for want of a better phrase. I found the hand cast in my storage, which I thought would fit in pretty nicely with this build because we're using a lot of dirt pathing and the item itself is full of dirt too. I coupled this with a flimsy shovel and then added some height by using a barrel and a dropped watering can on the top so that we had a toolbox too. Then I moved on to the back corner of the rock garden where I had this tree right next to the cliff face. I knew that I wanted to have a flower ring around this tree, as this code works great as a layer underneath other items and just makes the grass look more detailed and fuller than if I hadn't used the flower ring. But I also wanted to put down a swinging bench as well and just made this really cute little sitting spot. I still need to work on the view behind this, as I want there to be a waterfall in the background to just tie this sitting spot together. But for now, it really helps to fill in the space and give me some more direction on what I want the rest of the island to look like. I also added in some garden lanterns, which may feel a little bit out of place at the moment, but the reason why I wanted to include them in this build is because if I ever play the island at night, I want to be able to have some lighting to see the rocks. And the garden lanterns do at least give a little bit of light, so I've placed them sporadically through the build so that I have some light source for that purpose. If you're new around here and you're slightly confused on what the theme of this island is, this is my Cottagecore Flower Festival island. I wanted to make an island which was reminiscent of places I've lived in the past, so I'm working on creating a British countryside looking island which is themed after a flower festival we have in the UK. This build is both a way for me to fit rocks more naturally into the island, but also give me some spaces to bring in more of the countryside elements that I want for this island. My rock garden is fitting into the backdrop of a wider build for this part of the island, so if you want to see how this island is being put together, please subscribe to see more builds which will show you how this rock garden fits into the grander scheme of things. Each section of the rock garden was just decorated slowly, and all of them bring this feel of being in the countryside and add in the flower festival elements that I want you to feel as you walk around the dream address. I love that in this corner, which had slightly more space for me to decorate, I was able to get in a garden wagon and the bunny garden decoration to make it look more natural. The placement of these items though is super crucial for the rock garden as well. If you've ever tried to get all of the resources from the rocks, then you'll know you need to leave an edge behind you so that you can get every single drop from the rocks. As I want to save durability on my shovel, where the gaps between the pathing and the edge are bigger than they should be, placing items that can hold your character in place is a good idea. I've used this technique before when putting a rock garden together, and it makes such a difference if you're planning on making something which is more functional, particularly if you're planning on playing the island for a while. Whilst I was building this, I was testing if I could hit the rocks and whether I was sliding off items, which would mean that I wouldn't be able to get every drop when I am playing the game normally. So as I was placing items, I was trying to keep in mind which items would keep me in position and which ones needed to be placed at a slightly different angle so that I could still get all of the resources. It was a lot of puzzling, but we got there in the end with working out where each item needed to be and how to fill in the gaps and keep this build looking really pretty and really natural. When I had all of the main items down on the build, I then started going around and filling in some of the smaller sections that I had left behind and still needed some extra details putting in place. I found it easier to do this one step at a time, and I did seemingly move all over the place whilst I was trying to work out what items I wanted in what positions. But sometimes that is the best way to do it. You weave in and out of what you're working on and add down items, but then take them away because they don't quite work. You place flowers and then you find you need more height, so you take those away and you try something else instead. These small areas don't necessarily need a lot in them to fill out the islands, but they can really help with creating spaces which just feel finished. So I've used the small flower ring on its own, I've placed a mixture of white, orange and yellow flowers, and I've used wheat fields and the green leaf pile to just add in final touches which draw this island together. I also did want to include one small build that I plan to put down a little bit further up in the build. I found this cute blanket code in my custom code shop, and I thought this little space would be big enough for making a teddy bear's picnic. I love little builds like this. It was super easy to put together. At its core, there are 4 custom codes which make up the blanket, and I've then added the mama bear on top of that. You don't need to go crazy with items and codes sometimes when you're looking to make this sort of build, and I love these little details that just make an island feel fleshed out. To then keep this small build fitting into the wider theme and to keep it fitting in with the rest of the island, I've also added in the festival garland to just tie it back to the look that I want to go for on this island, before I then went around the back of the last rock and filled in a small undecorated section to just tie up the loose ends of this rock garden. Despite this build being an absolute nightmare to set up, I think that it turned out super well with the decorations I have in place on this rock garden. My island is slowly coming together and looks so cute and amazing. If you want to see more of the Flower Festival theme on this island and how I'm making it functional for daily gameplay, you should check out this video next, where I made a flower farm and flower shop, which also doubles up as an area for me to breed every single flower in the game, and I'll see you over there.